Good morning to all of you and welcome to the third edition of our VoltaChem Power-2-X Tour. And today we're going to talk about next generation water electrolysis, cost-effective hydrogen production enabled by high-tech innovations. Martijn, it's a really long title for a beautiful talk show. We already did 2 of these talk shows. What did you take away from the last one?
Well, we actually indeed have had 2. So the first one was about system integration, so about employing renewable energy in the industry. I think for that one, it was really clear that we have to step up on renewable energy production and also look worldwide where to implement novel technologies and novel production facilities. The second one was about power to chemicals, producing fuels and chemicals from CO2. I think there we dived really into the technology, also the longer term developments and the need for collaboration between companies and knowledge institutes worldwide. And I think for this one, well, it's all about hydrogen.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it. My name is Jerre, I will be your host, so I have to make sure that we stop on time and that we are on time. You are my co-host today, you're also the program director at VoltaChem, of course. So it means that you have to ask the smart questions to our guests, right?
I will try.
Okay, we will try. And today we are from the Energy and Health Campus in Petten, but we're really happy with Johnson Matthey, who were the supporting partner. We were actually planning on traveling to the UK for this, but we couldn't do so because of the COVID situation, of course. Great that you guys are joining us today. And at our table, we also have Peter Bouwman, Director of R&D at Schaeffler. And we have Arend de Groot, lead scientist at the Power-to-Hydrogen program at VoltaChem. And online, I'm really happy that he is with us, Pete Ellis, technical director of green hydrogen at Johnson Matthey, and we will talk to him soon, of course. So those are the guests. Why these guests? Because you had to select them. Why did you choose these 3 people?
We selected them together, but I think, well, this topic of today is all about developing the supply chain of electrolysis and electrolyzers. I think these companies and the persons around the table, also virtually, are